This is Raina Campbell, your Chief Dream Driver, and welcome to the No Parking Podcast, where through conversations and discussions with creators like yourself, we'll find interesting approaches to help you take your dreams out of park, put them in drive, and ride towards success. Hey, Dream Drivers, welcome to episode 58 of the Dreams in Drive podcast. And we're back with a special minisode. So I want to get back into the habit of doing minisodes a bit more often, I should say. I often get feedback that a lot of the listeners like when I do these shorter episodes and they like hearing from me directly. So here I am. So when thinking about what we could talk about for today's episode, my mind was racing. I had all these ideas, and I'm somebody who's really big on when you feel called to do something, to do it. So I was driving home, it was raining, and this idea just popped into my head, and the idea was stop running from the patterns in your life. That was the thing that hit me. And maybe I was thinking about this because, I was driving home, having that whole drive home crisis of what the heck am I doing with my life, or what's my purpose? You know how you guys get. You guys listening in have had that moment when you're in the car by yourself and your mind and your thoughts are just going everywhere. So I had this feeling come to me that said the podcast I should do should be stop running from the patterns in your life and to share my story with you all. So I'm going to follow the feeling, and that's what we're going to do. So before I start talking, we have some things to talk about. If this is your first time listening to Dreams and Drive, please make sure that you are subscribed. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, whether you're listening on iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, Stitcher, wherever. Hit that subscribe and know that you will get an alert whenever a new episode comes out. If you want to follow along on social, all you have to do is use the hashtag DreamsInDrive or follow us at Dreams and Drive across the board, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or even on YouTube. So make sure to find us there. If you want today's show notes, because I'm going to be referencing things, just go to dreamsanddrive.com and click on episode 58. And something that I want to bring to your attention is that I'm building out a resources page on the site. So if you go to dreamsanddrive.com/free, or you just go to the Dreams and Drive page and click on the resources tab at the top, you can start seeing the stuff that we have up there. Right now I have a Shine ebook, 33 ways to market your brand, and we also have the networking template. So in one of the previous episodes, I talk about how I use this networking template when I'm reaching out to people. So I decided to just share that with you guys, and you can get that by going to dreamsanddrive.com/free. So, yes, you may wonder, right? Why do I start every podcast with the guest and ask them the question, what inspired you as a child? I think that question, right? Our childhood lays the foundation for the patterns that we'll often see enacting in our own lives. So I love to ask people to reflect on who they were as a child. And some people, it's very easy for them to answer. And for others, it's not as easy because sometimes we don't even realize what were the things that we were doing as a child. And if you were to ask me, I was the creative. I was always trying to convince someone of an idea. I was always reading, writing, putting things together, trying out new things. I was that crazy creative kid who, you could put me in a room by myself and I wouldn't be bored because I always was just thinking of things to do and things to create. And so if you were to listen to any of the previous episodes and it was an episode, that you liked, go back to the question in the beginning and listen to what that episode guest answered. And then think about how that whole conversation goes and what they ended up doing in life, and think about the connections between what inspired you as a child and then who you are today. So I'm not trying to get too deep with psychology, but I really think there's a connection. But let me give you a story, or let me tell you about my own story, and I'm not even going to go into childhood. Knowing that I was a person who liked to create, who's always thinking of things, let me tell you my story. And the realization I had in the car when, I felt called to write about stop running from the patterns in my life. And I think I was I feel like I felt that message because I was at a point where I was thinking like, what am I doing with my life? What is it that truly makes me happy? So I've been doing this podcast for a whole year now, and I don't know why I was doubting, why I was feeling like, I don't even know what I was thinking, but me just doing this exercise and thinking through my journey thus far has really solidified to me that interviewing people and talking to people is a gift and a passion of mine, and it's going to be a pattern that will continue to play out in my life, so I can either embrace it or I can run from it. All right, so let's get to the story. So I'm going to start this story in September 2009. That's when I went to Princeton. I was a freshman at Princeton. So my first job at Princeton was actually working in the dining hall. So that was part of my financial aid package. I had to spend a year in the dining hall. I couldn't get any other campus job. Maybe I could, but I just didn't know. So yeah, I spent a year in the dining hall working fourth shift, meaning that I was a dishwasher towards the end of the shift when people were eating. We would clean the kitchen, wash everything up, dump the pig buckets. Yeah, it was pretty disgusting, but that was our job. And I really love that job. But when I was like, listen, I'm not working in the dining hall again. No, no, no. So that summer, I made it my mission to go into the job portal for students online and look for a desk job, because I heard that working in one of the offices was the best thing to do. So I'm looking online and I find an opening for communications and marketing intern with Office of Career Services. And I knew that I had interest in communications. I knew I had an interest in marketing, but I didn't really know what that was really meant. But I applied for the job anyway. When school rolled around, Eva Kabu, who is who's now the director, who's now a director at Office of Career Services, she interviewed me and she hired me. And honestly, that being a communications and marketing intern at the Office of Career Services, I think was a blessing in disguise for me in so many ways. Just because the experiences that I had working with that team of women really shaped me who I am today. So one of the first things that Eva made me do was, I was supposed to be a writer on the student-to-student career services blog. So basically she would give me topics and I would write about it. That part was easy because I liked writing. I didn't really know too much about career services things, but I kind of figured it out. But she also gave me some creative freedom, and we had a flip camera, and she was like, why don't you go around and ask people different questions and then put it into a video? I told her I had video editing background, so I knew how to edit videos or whatever. So we had this flip camera, and I used to go around pestering people on campus to answer the question of the week, and then I would compile all of their answers into a little short video, and I'm gonna go and put that in the show notes. So if you guys want to see the little videos I was creating in Princeton, definitely go visit the show notes at dreamsanddrive.com. So basically, it was just a fun experience for me. And I worked at career services for 3 years. So sophomore, junior, and senior year. And my responsibilities developed over time. I met so many people at events, at all the career services events. I used to be there with the camera at the employer events when they would come and recruit on campus. They all knew me as the girl with the camera, either taking pictures or taking video. And I really honed a skill early on in those days for interviewing and for compiling answers and for getting people's story out of them. All right, so that's the career services part. Junior year, anybody at Princeton, or all students at Princeton, have to complete a junior paper in their department. So for sociology, that means you have to do some kind of independent research and write about a 40-page paper compiling all that research. So during my college years, I used to intern at CBS Corporation during the summers. I was part of the Emma Bowen Foundation program. So basically that meant that I was partnering with a media company for 4 years, and my sponsor company was CBS Corporation. So every summer, I would take the bus from Orange, New Jersey, and into New York City, Penn Station. That was like about a 30-minute ride or whatever. And I had this fascination with observing people on the train. And one day, the summer before going to junior year, I looked at the conductors, and I was like, what if the conductors didn't wear uniforms? Would their job, would they still be as effective? And I was obsessed with this idea. Like it didn't go away. So when junior year rolled around and we had to think about what we were going to focus on for our independent theses or independent papers or independent research, what am I saying? I said, I want to talk to people who wear uniforms and talk to them about how they feel about wearing uniforms. So basically, I did for my junior papers, I interviewed uniformed and non-uniformed employees at Princeton about their experiences, and it was so fun. Like, I got to talk to office workers, people who worked in maintenance, people who worked in construction, people who were janitors and food services workers. And I had this whole notion going into the research process that people who wore the uniforms would feel ashamed. When you think about uniforms, you think about, like, school uniforms. I used to hate having to wear a school uniform in elementary school, so I could only imagine that if I was an adult and had to wear a uniform, that I would feel, out of it. So basically, my studies found, or my findings, I realized that I concluded that uniforms were a sense of pride for university workers, especially because a lot of them were coming from neighborhoods where jobs were not necessarily abundant. So these, people who were food services workers, a lot of them were from Trenton, and that Princeton uniform carried a form of respect. So when they were on the bus going to work and they had that Princeton uniform on, they felt respected. People looked up to them. I also interviewed public safety workers, so how they felt being, the police on campus. It was just a passion of mine, and I ended up getting an A+ on my junior paper. I don't know if I ever told anyone that, but I ended up getting an A+ on the junior paper, and I really thought it was really great qualitative work. So moving into senior year, you have to write a senior thesis, and you can't graduate without writing these two things: junior paper and senior thesis. And my senior thesis was on policing in Orange, New Jersey, and perception. So I interviewed police officers. I interviewed residents of Orange, my hometown, and I interviewed police chaplains, and I compared their findings. And that also was just something that I really got invested in, getting to talk to the police officers and getting their stories, getting to talk to the chaplains and hearing their stories, and then talking to the residents and hearing their stories and compiling it all together, coding the notes, transcribing. I was becoming this little interview queen, and I didn't even think about it. It was just something that I loved to do. So I just want to make a little note before I keep going on and talking, is that I was a sociology major. So this was why I chose these topics, sociology major. All right, back to the story. So, all right, let's fast forward a little bit. So I graduated from college. I'm now working at a marketing agency in the city, getting ready for my fellowship that was coming up. My fellowship comes up. I started writing for MadameNoir.com with one of the business editors at the time, Tanya. And Tanya, I think she assigned me or told me that there was someone that she wanted me to interview. And I had never done, like, I thought, right? I said to myself, I don't know how to do an interview. Oh my God, what do I do, right? And I remember that first interview, it was kind of bad, but she gave me some feedback, and she said, let's find someone else for you to talk to. And that was where I started doing the interviews with entrepreneurs online. And I would write out the interviews, I would transcribe them afterwards, and then I would put them up and edit them. And I realized I loved doing that. I loved it, loved it, loved it. So at the time, I was working at the Vera Institute of Justice, and that was a nonprofit because, as you guys know, when I was in Princeton, I was part of this program called the P.D. Green Prisoner Assistance Program, and I used to go into local New Jersey facilities and help tutor inmates who were getting their GEDs and high school diplomas. So I applied to the fellowship program and was put into a program where I was helping to build prison college programs in prisons in 3 states: Michigan, North Carolina, and New Jersey. So anyway, that was my first job out of college. So one day I go to my boss, because we're getting to meet all these cool people who work in correctionals. I don't want to say cool, but we're getting to meet a lot of important people, a lot of important figures who work in the correctional space. It was just really something where I said, hey, let's do an interview series. I pitched it to my boss. He liked it. And I think I did about like 10 to 12 interviews with a lot of the leaders that that were part of the program. And those start going up on the Vera Institute blog. And it was just exciting. I love talking to people. I love, whatever. This was a new industry for me, but you ask people questions, you get them to start talking, whatever. You get your story, you transcribe it, you write it out, you put it up. People are able to breathe in that information, and I was fueled by that. But I still didn't realize that, whoa, this is like becoming a pattern for you right now. So I actually went to the Vera Institute site and went to my page on the site to see all the blog posts that I did. And you guys can also see that if you go to the show notes page. So when I left Vera in September 2014, only 6 of my blog posts went up. And another 7 went out after I left. The most recent post that went up with one of the people that I interviewed was April 4th, 2016. So can you imagine? I left in 2014 and they still had enough interviews to populate blog posts with until 2016. This is just a testament to anyone listening in. Your work goes beyond you. So sometimes you may not even realize the purpose. You may not even realize how this pattern in your life is going to be part of something bigger. And that's really amazing. And just doing this podcast helped me go back in time because I wouldn't even know that they were still publishing the interviews that I wasn't able to publish. Don't ever, ever, ever think that what makes you happy, what brings you fulfillment, where you find passion, doesn't matter and doesn't or isn't part of something bigger. It is. It definitely is. And that's why paying attention to the patterns in your life are super important. So around this time, I also started my blog. So let's fast forward to 2014. I was now working at .com distribution, which is my day job now. And I had my little blog, RainaCampbell.com. And I said, maybe I should interview people on my personal blog. So I launched my series called Brand Makers, where I talk to people about how they built their brands. I got to talk to a lot of interesting people. I'll put the link to that in the show notes as well. Or you can just go to RainaCampbell.com and then click on the Brand Makers tab. So that was another time where I was interviewing people, and I just loved it. It was something that made me happy. So .com distribution comes around. And my boss, we were building out the marketing department there. They threw me into another interview situation where I had to interview the guy who we commissioned to help write our white paper on the neuroscience of unboxing. So basically we were talking about what happens in your brain when you open a box. So I had to interview him about the white paper because we had no other talent to do it. And that was fun. So here I was in another interview situation. Again, I didn't think anything of it. So my boss had this idea that we should do a Emerge video series where our CEO interviews different clients about how they emerge by working with our company. That was pretty cool because I got to then help facilitate and produce interviews. So she was interviewing Mike Galmer, who's from Vineyard Vine. She interviewed Lisa Price of Carol's daughter because Carol's daughter was one of our clients at the time. And I got to sit behind the scenes and see how it worked. I got to coach her because she didn't really have that much experience interviewing on camera. And that was something where, hey, interviewing's coming into my life again, but here I am on the production side. And then finally, January 1st of 2016, I launched Dreams and Drive, where I officially committed to showing up every week to have one podcast where I'm interviewing someone, a creative or lifestyle entrepreneur, about how they took their dreams out of park and into drive. Now, do you understand that was a very long-winded story, and I'm sorry if it went on for so long, but do you understand why I say you have to listen to the patterns in your life and you have to stop running from the patterns in your life? Because I think for a long time, although I knew that I liked interviewing people, I didn't really make the connection that, whoa, you've been interviewing people since freshman or sophomore year. It was always something that I loved, and every new job that I had, I always found a way to create interviews. But it wasn't until January 2016 that I actually solidified it and made it into a model that was consistent. And I really think this is going to be the beginning of me really coming into my passion and my calling and my purpose. And I'm saying this to you because it took me a while to really embrace that, Raina, wherever you go, you are going to thrive when you can talk to people and facilitate their stories. And so I'm going to say to each and every one of you, ask yourself, what is the pattern in my life that keeps showing up? And remember, I'm talking about when it comes to patterns of purpose and patterns of passion. What is the thing that gives you energy that you can go to different points in your life and find that it has always showed up in one way or another? So I think when you're feeling stuck, sometimes it's hard to really reflect on those things and to reflect on those positive aspects of your life. Because when you're feeling like, oh my God, like what's going on? What am I doing with my life? You don't actually think about the things that you've always been doing in those patterns. I just want to say, I know that you heard my little long-winded story, but I hope it just goes to show you that your passion is probably there. If you feel like you're someone who's stuck in park or neutral right now and you're trying to get in reverse so you can get out the driveway, ask yourself, what's that one thing that I've always done? Even ask yourself, what inspired you as a child? I used to love movies. I used to love reading. I used to love stories. I used to love putting together things. I used to love watching people, observing people. Ask yourself that and be honest with yourself, because I think, if you're going to be a dream driver, you have to be honest with yourself and you have to allow your car to drive you to where it's driving you. And if you're not embracing that passion, if you're not listening to your life, as episode 48 guest Levante said, if you're not listening to your life, then you can lose your voice. You can be led astray. So I want you guys to all really think about that thing. What's the thing that you're running from? What are you running from? And if you embraced it and truly embraced it and truly, truly accepted it, you would really start thriving. Because even with this podcast, a lot of people say, they've noticed my growth over the year. In the beginning of the year when I was doing podcasts, I knew that I could interview people. I really, it was easy for me, or it was something that came natural, but I wasn't confident. I wasn't confident in asking my questions. I wasn't confident in me being able to lead the interview. But over time, I feel like I have become more confident. Even though I get nervous whenever I'm about to enter into an interview, I still feel at the end of it like, wow, hey, I did it, right? That's going to sound so corny, but I'm going to say to each and every one of you, please, 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 if you don't do anything today, if you never listen to a Dreams and Drive podcast ever again, just remember that when you stop running from the patterns in your life and start embracing it, so many things could happen, but you really have to first identify, what is that pattern? And what is that pattern in your life trying to show you? And I mean, this could apply to lots of things. This could apply to things beyond passion and purpose, relationships, jobs, whatever. But when it comes to really figuring out what's that thing that keeps you going, what's that thing that keeps you fueled, if you feel like you don't know what it is, it probably is there, but you just haven't listened to your life and you haven't really taken a step back to really analyze it. All right, so the question is, what do you do next? What's next after you identify the pattern in your life, the one that you may either be running from or learning to accept? So let's use this whole podcast as an example. I've told you all my story with interviews, how my love for interviews and my passion, my skill, my expertise, my love for them has really evolved over the years, but it's been consistent. So what does someone need to do if they're at this point in their journey, right? If they're at this point in their drive? And I would say to you, I think the number one most important thing is to figure out how to infuse that pattern into your everyday reality. So if you're someone who, like me, loves interviewing, are you interviewing consistently? And if so, how can you do that? So I realized that I know that my purpose, my calling, my destiny, whatever it is probably going to be somewhat involved with interviewing and talking to people and telling stories in some manner. So that's why I invested heavily within the past year in really making Dreams and Drive something that was beyond just a blog post, a community, something that I was actively and consistently working towards. Now, that probably won't be the case for everyone, but let me give you a practical example. So let's say that you're a dream driver right now who has a love for interviewing, but you can't invest in something such as a podcast, something long term. You don't have the time to do it. And let's say you're still working at a job. Maybe there could be a way that you can flex those skills or use those skills within the workplace, and that might help you feel a little bit more fulfilled. I actually was gonna write or do a episode called "How to Hate a Job You Love," and I always think that if you are really feeling dissatisfied in your job, you have to infuse parts of what you love into it and find a way to create some kind of special project that gives you some kind of sense of purpose. And by having that thing that will give you purpose, then it might be easier for you to fill in and do the other mundane, non-loving things or non-loved things of the job that you hate. So that can be an example. Maybe you can find a way to infuse that passion into what you are already committed to, or to build some kind of special project that you can work on. That is a great way. I also think that you have to make sure, once you identify your pattern, you need to make sure that you are actively putting yourself in the environments where you can thrive and where you can learn. So for me, in my story, I think that doing the freelance writing on Madame Noir, continuously, seeking out interviews and working with my business editor for those first 1 to 2 years really helped me hone my skill with an expert who gave me constant feedback, and it also helped give me confidence eventually to have my own blog and to interview people on my own site, and eventually to, have a podcast. So it's all about really stacking the building blocks so that you can build towards something, so that you can get towards something. You definitely also, I would say, let people know about the patterns that you are seeing in your life, because you never know how they can help you, or you never know how they can help validate it. Sometimes we let things stay in our head for too long and they're never validated, and we're never pushed to continue to do that. Actually, let me give you an example of that. So, my mom, before this podcast, came into my room when we were talking about something, and she mentioned how she said when I was younger, she used to take me to the library, and how I would always just she used to have to drag me out of the library because I would have books on books on books and try to read them everywhere. It was crazy. I used to insist that she take me every week until I could walk to the library by myself. And that validated for me, because I told her, I've always felt like I was that books person. I was that interview type person, always looking for stories. And she said, yes, that is very true. And by her saying, yes, that is very true, that was served as some sort of validation that, wow, that's something that other people are seeing as well. So I would say, don't keep your thoughts, don't keep this process all to yourself, because there's much you can also learn about how others are perceiving you and your skills and your passion as well. So before I end, I just want to end with this little note that I wrote in my show notes for today's episode. And it says, reinvention is important, but I truly believe when you feel stuck, you can find the answer to movement by listening and learning from the patterns in your life. So remember that, you guys. Fulfillment, passion, calling. I think we all owe ourselves the time to really finding what that means for each and every one of us. And one of the best ways to do it is to start listening and to start observing and to start being truthful to yourself about the things that give you light, the things that give you energy. If there's anything that I've learned from the guests, is that once you stop fighting your reality and start working in it, and I mean, really embracing what your passion is and what that thing is for you, your life will definitely start changing. And going from park to reverse to neutral to drive is going to be a journey that you really start enjoying. So I'm going to end it there. If you guys like today's episode, just go on social, share it on social. It's going to be, we're across the board at Dreams and Drive. Use the hashtag Dreams and Drive to talk about this show. Tweet me. I'm always on social, engaging with you guys all. So I really appreciate it. I'm going to put the links to all my stuff in the show notes. Just go to dreamsanddrive.com and click on episode 58. Make sure to subscribe, you guys. Subscribe. All right, so the next episode, I'm going to give you a little bit of a teaser. It's going to be with Courtney Futch, and it's 2 parts. So the next episode is going to be part 1, and then after that's going to be part 2, because something happened, and we had to do a part 2, and that's all I'm going to say. So don't miss it. Keep dreaming. Keep driving. I love you guys. I appreciate you all. The podcast is growing. The community is growing. Couldn't do without you. All right. Bye.